Okay, next we're going to go to the configuration of object NAT on the ASA. So let's do the following. Let's configure the following: traffic flowing inside outside, so in this direction, traffic flowing inside outside, with a source of VLAN 33. For that traffic I want to do dynamic path in the ASA's interface address, of course using object NAT. So we follow up on those steps. Step number 1, configure the object, and step number 2, configure the NAT statement within the object. So now the rule is that within the object, you always match on the real IP address. Always. That's a rule of thumb in the object. So we say object, let's say in out path, inside outside, of type network. So object of type network, give it a name for inside outside path, and we match on the subnet of 10.10.33.0. And then within the object we say NAT, and what is the traffic flow? It comes from the inside, it goes on the outside. And what kind of NATing do I want to perform? Dynamic or static? Dynamic in my case, and I want to NAT the traffic in how? Within a pool, or within a path pool, or within the interface of the ASA, which is path as well. That's what I want to do. What I want to do in the ASA's interface, which is going to be on the outside interface. So it's very simple. Show run object. The way you read this command, show run object. Let's put this in Notepad, and then show run NAT, for example. So this is the actual configuration. So I'm defining in the object, in here, I'm defining the real source, which in my case it's a subnet. And then I'm telling the ASA as traffic flows inside outside, I want to dynamically NAT the source. Which source? This, if the source is that subnet, I want to dynamically NAT that source into what? Into the interface. Which interface? Into the egress interface. So it's very simple to read the NAT statement. So in the object you match on the real source of the traffic. And then you're saying, as I see traffic with that source flowing inside outside, I want to dynamically NAT that source into the egress interface, IP address, which is the outside interface. So if we say show run object, this is one more command to verify the object configuration, show run object inline. So instead of showing you configuration like this with 2 lines, it's going to show you everything within 1 line. But then show NAT is going to show you the NAT configuration. As you can see, because I've configured automatic NAT, the ASA has added that NAT configuration into section number 2, which section number 2 is the auto NAT policy section. To actually see, the show NAT command doesn't exactly show you what happens. It says that as traffic flows inside to outside, I'm dynamically NATing the source into the egress interface, but I don't see the source. So ideally, you should always use the show NAT detail command, because the show NAT detail command shows you that as traffic flows inside outside, I do a dynamic NAT for the source into the egress interface. And then it shows you exactly that in a way better format, which shows you that the source, the real source, which is that subnet, gets translated into that interface of the ASA, which is the egress interface. So it's a better way to visualize exactly what gets NATed into what based on your configuration. Of course, it's because this is dynamic NAT. If we say show xlate, we should see nothing in the table because this is being built on demand. There we go. But now, of course, if we now send traffic from PCB out to routed fee, it is going to get netted into the gig01 interface. Let's go on PCB and, for example, telnet routed fee is loopback. Let's say telnet 5553, Cisco, and if we say who, I am not seeing the source to be the real address of PCA, which is 10.10.33.100. I see that traffic shows up to come from the ASA's interface IP address on the outside interface. Which to confirm that going on the ASA, if we say show xlate, we see in here that we have done path, because that's what I'm doing, path to the interface of the ASA. We have done path. And as traffic flows from the inside with a source of 10.10.33.100 to the outside, this traffic got netted the source. So as traffic flows from the inside to the outside, the source of the traffic got netted into the ASA's IP address. That's the translation table. And flags are R and I, which means it's dynamic NAT, and it's a port map, which means it's dynamic path. Also, if you say show connection long, we should see the same thing. There we go. As traffic flows from the inside to the outside, we have this source of 10.10.33.100, which gets netted into that new source of 136.138.1. And of course, destination remains unchanged because we're not doing destination NAT as well. Destination remains unchanged for that session. Now let's go and also configure static NAT. Now, of course, before we move on, actually, because I've configured that NAT statement to say NAT inside outside, it means that this applies only for traffic flowing inside outside. Now, let's assume that, for example, so iServer, this server in here, it's a public service which has to be reachable from both, let's say initially from the internet only, from the internet via a public IP address, and let's suppose that it has to be reachable for the HTTPS service. So only for that service has to be reachable. And because this IP is not routable of ISO 172.16.3.100, I'm going to make sure that 172.16.3.100 is visible from this DMZ interface, is visible on the outside is 136.1.38.100. So what I want to do now is a static object path. So I want to do a static translation, but not a one-to-one IP mapping, only for that service of HTTPS. So what that means is that I'm going to go now on ASA fee and say conft I'm going to say object of type network, and I'm going to say ICE static path. ICE, let's say HTTP static. I'm going to say in here host and the ICE real IP address 172.16.2100. So always I'm matching in the object on the real IP address of what I'm trying to NAT. And then I'm saying as traffic goes inside, outside. As traffic goes not inside, outside. As traffic goes in this direction, I want to NAT I statically for the HTTPS service. And I'm going to say, let's say show nameif. And that is going to be as traffic flows from ICE to the outside. So I'm going to say NAT ICE outside. And I want to perform a NAT type of static into what? Into 136.1.38.100. But for which service? For TCP port 443 we stated. So first we put in here the real TCP port 443 and the mapped TCP port, which is likewise 443. Exit. So now we say show run object. Let's look at the configuration. This is ICE HTTP static and show run NAT, and this is my NAT configuration. So what I'm saying now is that as traffic flows in the ICE to outside direction, if the source of the IP flow is that IP address, I want to statically NAT the source into what? I want to statically NAT that source into this IP address. But it's not a static IP to IP mapping, it's not a static NAT, it's a static path. Because furthermore, I'm saying for which service? For TCP, and this is the real service port number and the mapped service port number, which in my case it is the same. But again, it could happen that, for example, ICE could listen for HTTPS on port number, let's say 8080, but I want people from the internet to connect to the ICE's public IP address of 136.138.100 on the default HTTPS port of 443. So if this was the use case, then I needed to configure in here that the real port was not HTTPS but was 8080. So I'm mapping the real port to the map port which is visible on the outside. But in my case it's the same, so both the real port and the map port are going to be the same. If we look in the configuration and say show NAT, detail likewise is going to be another entry in the auto NAT section because I'm still configuring, I have still configured object NAT. So section number 2, auto NAT policies. And then I'm saying as traffic flows from ICE interface to outside interface, so ingress to egress, I want to statically NAT the source into the source. This is the real source as identified by that object. I'm going to NAT that source into this being the map source. And then for which service? TCP, and as we know, this is the real service, HTTPS, and then the map service, HTTPS. So it makes sense that left to right, if you first put the real address and then the mapped address, then likewise you first put the real service and then the map service. It even makes sense because if you think about it, what ASA is going to see, if ICE would initiate traffic source with 172.16.3.100 and with a source port of 80, so source address of that and source port of 80. So this is what the ASA receives: TCP traffic from ICE real address and ICE real source port. And as your traffic is being routed out on the outside, I choose to map only the source to 136.138.100 and keep the port as it was, equals 80. Or the source port is kept as 80, only the source address is being changed into the new public address. Of course, in my case, the port is not 80. It could have been 80. In my case, the port is 443. It is the HTTPS port. But the example is going to be the same in the end, the configuration-wise, except the fact that port number changes. But now, of course, if I want this traffic to work, if I want people from the internet to be able to access ICE on its public IP address, because this traffic flows low, 0 to 5 to 50, low to high, I have to allow this traffic in an ACL. And then in the inbound ACL in here, I am going to match, I'm going to say permit TCP any, which is anybody from the internet, if it's destined to host, and then I put in here as the host the real address of ICE, not the mapped address of ICE. I'm going to say to host 172.16.3.100 on port 443. So like it was the case with iOS zone-based ASA Firewall and NAT integration, it is the same case in here. When you integrate NAT with ACLs, as was the case with zone-based ASA Firewall, then in the ACL you're gonna match on the real address, not on the mapped address. And on the ASA, it's actually one specific reason that they have done it this way, because ideally what we're gonna do is, in that inbound ACL, you're gonna make use of this object in there. Again, for scalability. So when I'm going to configure that inbound ACL, I'm going to say the following: access list outside in permit TCP from any to the object of this equal 443. So for this reason, because they wanted to allow you to reference in the inbound ACL the object, and because the object always matches on the real address, that's why in the new NAT after V3, in the ACL you match on the real address, not on the mapped address of the destination. The mindset was simple, that as soon as if ICE changes its IP address to, let's say, .101, if ICE would change its IP address to .101, I just go in the object and say host 172.16.3.101, and automatically also the ACL gets updated because it references the object, not the actual IP address of ICE. So let's configure the ACL. Conf T. And then, of course, access group outside in, and interface outside. And that was the last option. Let's confirm that now if I go on router 3 and I try to open up a TCP connection on port 443 on the mapped address of ICE 136.1.38.100, session should work. Let's confirm that. Let's go on router 3 and say telnet 136.1.38.100 on port 443. It's opened. If we look on ASA tree and we say show xlate, of course that's a static entry in there. This was in here before we have configured, we have initiated any traffic flow, because flags is SR, it is a static path, because the static path is always active in the translation table. And as you can see, it's mapping ISA's real address of port 443 into ISA's mapped address on port 443 for TCP. If we look in the connection table for, because we have initiated the traffic, show connection long, we should see, and there we go, we see it in here, that traffic was initiated from PC, from router 3. This was the source of my traffic, and of course source did not get netted. This is the source of my traffic. But PC3 initiated traffic destined to the mapped address of ICE, which of course is traffic flow to the ASA. It was translated back to the real address of ICE on port 443. So this is the destination of my IP flow. And flags is UNB, which means session is up and session was initiated low to high. We know that because it came inbound on the outside interface. Okay, the connection was closed. Okay, no problem. But of course, with this configuration in here, so I'm publishing that ICE's IP address. That's the real address on the ICE ASA interface, only on the outside interface. Maybe I would want ICE to be visible as the same IP address. I would want ICE 172.16.3.100 to be visible as 136.138.100 both on this interface and on this interface and on this interface. So out on all of those interfaces, I want ICE to actually be visible as, let's say, 136.1.38.100. So what this means is that I want also server A to be able to reach ICE by initiating a session source from server A destined to 136.1.38.100 to the public IP address. Likewise, I would want PCB to be able to initiate a session to ICE with a source of PCB and destination of the public address of ICE, 136.1.38.100. So if I want that to happen, the only thing I have to change is to replace the outside keyword in here with the any keyword. Because if I do that going on ASA3 and I say show run NAT, if I replace this outside keyword with the any keyword, it means that ICE is going to get natted into this address. As long as traffic flows inbound on the ICE interface, which is also always going to flow, and goes outbound, I don't care where. If I say any, that's what it means, that ICE is going to always get natted the same way into that IP address, regardless of what is the egress interface of the traffic. Because with the current configuration, only ICE is visible as 136.138.100 only on the outside interface. So only out in here. So if I go in here and I change this around, I go under the object network, and I say NAT ICE any and then static. So if we say show run NAT now, it should have overridden the configuration. There we go. Which now let's try and also initiate traffic from PCB to ICE on the mapped address of ICE on 136.138.100. Let's go on PCB, open up a browser, and now if you want to reach Cisco ICE, I'm going to say HTTPS 136.1.38.100. And there you go. I understand the technical risks, add exception, confirm, and I'm connected. If we say show xlate, show xlate of type static port map, there we go. So it is the same configuration, the same entry. ICE real address of that gets netted into this address, but now as traffic flows from between the ICE ASA interface and any other interface of the ASA. So if we say show connection long and look for our connection from PCB, and there we go, it is in here. So we see traffic from the inside from PCB, which of course PCB didn't get netted, flowing through the ICE interface. So that is the egress interface. Traffic was actually flowing, was initiated to this mapped address of Cisco ICE, which as they say routed the traffic through, it has netted that address back to the real address of Cisco ICE, which is 172.16.3.100. So this is the configuration you would want to perform if this is your use case. If you want to make sure that this service is visible the same way out on all interfaces, everybody can reach that service via the same public IP address, then you just change, as we did in here, this with the any keyword. Which pretty much is simple. What this means, as traffic flows from this source, and as traffic flows between ICE interface of the SA and any other interface of the SA, then this source is going to get statically netted into this, but of course only for the HTTPS service. Because if we kill the connection now, and we put that configuration back again as it was before, show run NAT. So we say NAT ICE outside only. Let's confirm the configuration was applied, show NAT detail. So now I'm saying that this source of ICE gets netted into this address, but only for the HTTPS service. And this time again, only if traffic flows between ICE and outside interfaces of the ASA. Which what this means is that now if I go on PCB and try to connect to the mapped address of ICE, which is 136.1.38.100, session is not going to work. Because for traffic flowing between the ICE interface of the ASA and the inside interface of the ASA, ICE does not get netted into that address. Only for traffic flowing ICE to outside. Let's confirm that. So if I go now on PCB, now open up the browser, I should not be able to access ICE on its mapped address. I have to access it on its real address. There you go, it says connecting, and it's not going to work. Unable to connect. So I have to actually connect to ICE on its real address. And there we go, it worked now. So we have done with object NAT, we have done both dynamic and static NAT, and we have done both regular like static, regular NAT, and also PAT as well.